Hello, today's Thursday, the 11th of January 2018. I have just read Fire and Fury. In fact, I read it twice before doing this short introduction to it. In fact, if you're going to read it, before you actually read it, you probably already know all the juicy bits because they were released up front. I saw interviews with Michael Wolff, people talking about it and panel discussions, and lots of the really interesting stuff came out in that, such as the way Trump behaves with locking his door and wanting to make his own bed and leaving his shirt on the floor, and the dysfunctional nature of the White House in general. Having said that, there were one or two interesting little things, and as a history book, this is quite curious to read, particularly as everything is in recent memory, as nearly everything refers to things which happened in 2017. Now, the author Michael Wolff, he managed to get into the White House, and there's been lots of things said about how he managed to do this. Now, what happens, as I understand it, I've never been there, is that you get a press pass, and you have a grey press pass which will allow you into the sort of the press area. So I presume what they've got there is sort of a press room with some press releases and some computers and internet access, and that's about it. Oh, and some pictures as well. There'll be some photographs, and that'll be about it. And there'll be some newspapers and magazines. And beyond that, though, if you want to actually get into the place where the politicians and the civil servants hang out, you need what's a blue press pass. And Michael Wolff must have got this blue press pass, and somebody must have issued it to him. So once he got his press pass, he sat himself down in a sofa in the West Wing, and he said it was in the book, it's semi-permanent. And what he'd done when he was there, he'd have been talking to people as and when he saw them. Would people have come to him and talked to him voluntarily? That is hard to believe. Would he have picked up snippets of conversation? Yes, I presume he would have done, but he wouldn't have picked up all that much. Effectively, what he's done is he's produced a book on gossip, because it's going to be rather difficult to back up many of the things he says. Having said that, nothing really has so far been denied. There have been some mistakes pointed out, but those mistakes, in fact, I think are quite minor. To give one or two examples, there's Mika Brzezinski, who is on Morning Joe, and she said that she said one of the statements which is in his book, and not the person whom Michael Wolff actually credited it to. Rupert Murdoch referred to Trump as a moron, but in an earlier article that Michael Wolff wrote, he said that Murdoch referred to him as an idiot. This was probably not a good idea of Murdoch to actually do this. Wanting to do a deal which is going to need Trump's approval, and additionally, Murdoch will undoubtedly know who actually reported this to Michael Wolff, because he can't have said it in front of too many people. What we do see in the book, though, is that Trump is very much trying to get into Murdoch's good graces, and Murdoch is not really interested in talking to him. Anyway, one or two other little mistakes in the book. There is the CNN report of the Russia dossier. There seems to be a difference whether it was in the book, and that is the way I actually recall it. Perhaps that's the most serious of the mistakes. Another one about Hope Hicks. I remember when Trump introduced her to a crowd, he said she was 27, and in the book he says she was 26. Maybe she was 26 when he first met her, but certainly by the time he was working for Trump in the political arena, she was by then 27. But so I think these are quite minor, really. There's one or two problems maybe with style, because he does tend to use words like likely, maybe, quite a lot. But then again, he's reporting on gossip, so that's got to be understood. And another thing is he uses the passive voice quite a lot. That's the way I take it. I like to know who said something rather than it was said. So there's some ideas. Now, the book itself, in my opinion, is not actually about Donald Trump. It's more about Steve Bannon. And I suspect that Steve Bannon was the #1 contributor to this book. And the thing is, Michael Wolff says he likes Steve a lot, but it's very negative towards Steve Bannon. Now, when you look at him, he does sort of give a sort of a negative impression. He is a rebel with a cause. He's latched onto this sort of this right-wing ideologies. America for Americans, anti-immigrant, anti-foreigner in general, pro-Christian, well, his interpretation of Christianity. I think that a genuine Christian probably wouldn't see it in the same way. Anti-Muslim, and these ideas, these policies, which, okay, Trump may share, but if you look at the two of them, they're totally different. Steve, he looks as though he sleeps in his clothes, whereas Donald Trump, he always looks immaculate. In fact, any interview you've ever seen of or photographed, there's only two ways he's dressed, and that's either with his golf stuff on, which is very rare, or in a suit. And I remember in an interview with him in the 80s when he was filmed at home in the garden on a Sunday afternoon with Ivana, and he was in a suit. Well, maybe he put the suit on just because the interviewer was turning up, but he claimed he always was like that. One thing in the book that he doesn't like is that somebody has reported that one of the lights wasn't working, or in his room or bathroom or something. He came out in a bathrobe and got somebody to sort it out, and he got really upset about this. Said, "Can you imagine me? I'm not the sort of person who walks around in a bathrobe." The conflict within the book is largely between the Bannonites and those who are, should we say, more moderate, such as Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner. Now, they are trying to do things in a more pragmatic way. Now, one thing which I think is actually quite obvious, but I hadn't actually thought of this myself, was that the first lady is not Melania, it's Ivanka. In Ivanka, it's as though she's trying to position herself to be the first female president, whereas Steve is clearly trying to position himself as the candidate for the 2020 election. And I think this may be part of, again, this is now interpretation, that he's now trying to distance himself from the Russia investigation as far as he can, because this has got nothing to do with him. It was before he came on board. One interesting feature is the way that Jared Kushner, he brings in Henry Kissinger. So a character from the past, very much associated above all with the Nixon era, 40 years ago, plus indeed, because we think of things such as Vietnam and the Yom Kippur War, which is 73, 74, even that period. So, Kissinger seems to be able to pull people together, and he set up meetings as well. So, manages to get a meeting with Chinese diplomats, for example. Now, they all seem to be pretty worried, though, about Trump's tweeting, and the first international meeting which was set up with the Mexican president, and which, after a nasty tweet, the Mexican president just doesn't turn up, and that's to be expected. Now, the style of the book is it's easy to read, I think. So from that point of view, having said that, I was really looking forward to it, and looking forward to something is maybe half the enjoyment. But in all honesty, I don't think it's as good as The Making of Donald Trump by David K. Johnson. I know I said that my other film that I thought that was a really good book, but it's an easier one to actually go through, and but let's face it, though, we must understand that Michael Wolff had very little time to put this together, and all sorts of things could have happened. You don't know. Trump might have been impeached, so he could have been arrested, or whatever. Something could have happened. So he had the pressure on him, so that it was still news when it came out. Now, the mistakes that I've mentioned, he had 3 checkers, according to what he put in his acknowledgements. So, you know, I think those mistakes are minor, but there may be other things which are more major. Of course, the Trump supporters are saying, okay, fake news, or it's lies, or whatever. But now the onus is on them to say what is lies, and if it is untrue, well, okay, point them out. But it's anybody can go around saying silly slogans like "Make America Great Again," but let's look at the facts. And what Trump basically appears to be doing is to be making America worse than it's ever been before. That's not Michael Wolff's conclusion, that's mine. Michael Wolff's conclusion is that there's a group of people who are trying their best to make a dysfunctional system work, and there is the undertext of them. What should they do? Should they resign and get out of it, or should they do their bit for the country, despite how much they dislike working for the White House, and try to make it work? Because at the end of the day, Donald Trump was selected in a fair election, and he won according to the system. And so, like it or not, unless he gets impeached, he's going to be there until 2020. And let's hope he won't be such, but he could be there until 2024.